Toy Story came out in 1995, the year I was born. Toy Story 2 came out in 1999. Then we had to wait 11 years for the third one to come out in 2010. And now, 9 years after that, in 2019, we're seeing Toy Story 4. So obviously, a lot of people didn't see this coming. There's always been this sort of joke around it, like, oh, they're going to make a Toy Story 4. They even made a joke about it in Muppets Most Wanted. Most of us who had seen the third movie thought it wrapped everything up kind of nicely. It was a nice, nostalgic, yet really good original film that paid tribute to the franchise while also doing some really cool stuff. It was nominated for Best Picture, so Toy Story 3 was going to be quite the masterpiece to top. Toy Story 4, I don't know what I thought of it at first. I thought, yeah, it's cool that they're bringing back Bo Peep, because that was a storyline that sadly just randomly went away in the third movie that I wish they would have explained a little more, or maybe went into more detail about. And then with this movie, we were getting that chance. I remember originally being told it was going to be a romantic comedy, and I was like, okay, so it'll be sort of like an extended version of one of those Toy Story tunes or shorts that they've been doing for the last couple years since the third movie came out. And then I saw the movie, and surprisingly, actually, this movie does things to conclude the franchise and wrap up character arcs better than the third movie did. In fact, it started to make me question why the third movie even ended the way it did. If you want to get into the story, it's still Woody and his friends. They're now at Bonnie's house. There hasn't been any span of time between the third one and the fourth one. I think just maybe a year or so. Woody is now in Bonnie's playroom, but he doesn't feel like he belongs too much. He's not getting played with as much as everyone else is, and he's obviously got a deep connection to Andy still, despite the fact that he's grown up and Woody's no longer with him. And then he's worried about Bonnie growing up properly, goes to her for her first day of school, where she makes this new friend called Forky, who comes alive. I guess that explains how toys become real in these movies. I guess they just get made and then boom, life. There's a lot of questions there. But Forky doesn't want to be a toy. He wants to be trash because that's what he was made to do. He was made for a purpose and he wants to be something else, which that alone could make up a pretty good movie. And it brings up a lot of interesting ideas that haven't been explored before in the past Toy Story movies, but have always been questioned. And it was cool that they brought these ideas into the mix. But along with that, they go on a trip, and Woody's making it very important that Forky stays with the group, commits to his purpose of being a toy. And meanwhile, Woody meets up with Bo Peep again, who has now gone on to be this independent woman who just goes around helping other toys and just travels. And she's kind of changed a bit to the point where Woody, some of the things he says doesn't really click with Bo Peep the same way they used to. You know, they've gone down different trajectories, but there's also still quite the chemistry between them, so it's obvious that it's not like she's grown past him or anything. In fact, he longs to kind of be at her level without explaining it in an outward manner. It's about Woody finding his new place in this world when his previous job, the thing he was meant to do, is no longer useful. He's not as useful in Bonnie's room as he was in Andy's, and he needs to find a new place. He doesn't realize that at first, and he's sort of resistant to the change. It's only through Bo Peep that he finally starts to accept it. It's really awesome, actually, that the movie's going into this, because Toy Story 3 ended the way it did, but, this movie brings up that, Woody never really got over Andy, and you kind of question that, too. You're like, it was good that the characters were still together in the third movie rather than Woody going off to college and probably being useless there. But was Toy Story 3 really Woody's answer to what his real purpose is? Is he meant to still be hopping around to different children for the rest of his lives, or is he supposed to be doing something different at this point, something that can be more productive? And him helping Forky to find his way, find his own place, Woody in that way learns what his place is, which is to help toys outside of Bonnie's room, which, man, it's spectacular. It's a spectacular idea. But the movie also has really amazing animation, even compared to the third movie, which, you know, you can obviously compare it to the first one and the second one, and there's a huge comparison in the differences, but even the third movie, I'm like, yeah, it looks even better than the third movie somehow. And you gotta give it to the cast once again. You know, it's been many years at this point, but you just would never hear that in their voices. They still sound just like they did in the original series. They're having just as much fun. It's great to have Andy Potts back as Bo Peep in a larger-than-ever role. And I also like a lot of the new characters. That was one of my main problems with the third movie, is that it introduced a lot of people, and a lot of them weren't memorable, or it didn't seem like they were given enough time for them to develop. But this movie, every little character that it's introduced is not only really funny and really interesting, but they also pull off some things that I never expected Pixar to do this well. Yeah, even Pixar. Pixar's really known for doing the whole surprising villain gimmick, and here, it's not really done that way. It's more like there is a villain, but she's not really a villain. It's more that they do the opposite of the surprising villain, where it's more of a surprising hero. Even though it's still kind of dark, you still kind of question her motives, and even if she's in the right, even when Woody goes along with her plan, you kind of wonder, is this right? Should this be done? But I think that's far more interesting than the typical black and white villains. Even when they are revealed, they're still typically black and white. Here, it's like I could see some people still finding her to be an evil character, even though her intentions are selfish, but they're for the greater good also. You know, she would explain that her plan in a very accepting manner. Also, like Key and Peele's characters, they're super funny, and they do some pretty wacky jokes with them that the Toy Story franchise has never really done. I think my biggest issue here is that, you know, Buzz gets some of the story, but it's not like he's really getting an arc this time around, and all the other characters who are Andy's original toys and some of Bonnie's toys don't really do much. A lot of the time they're just sitting on the camper waiting for their, you know, moment to add something to the story, but they're never really there to say anything funny, develop their own arcs any farther, which is a little disappointing. But at this point, there's so many of those characters, and this movie really wasn't focused on their story. It was much more about Woody's story, that it didn't feel like it was necessary to add more of them. I didn't really miss them. I had seen enough of them in the second movie and the third movie that, I don't know, the story stuff that they had for Woody was so good that it was easy for me to forget that they were even in the movie, and that's not a bad thing. I didn't really need more of them. I can't help it. It's another slam dunk for Pixar, a home run. This is a really good, great movie. I would give it, honestly, 5 stars. Yeah, I don't often give movies 5 stars, and even last year, I didn't give any new movie 5 stars. I think the highest I went was 4.5, but this year, this movie's that good. It's entertaining all the way through. And just like all the other Toy Story movies, it's keeping the franchise up there. This might be one of the best franchises to ever exist. And hey, who knows? You know, if they decide to do a 5th movie, I'm not gonna count them out this time. So 5 stars, please go see it. I'm sure you already planned on seeing it, but I will be very happy to watch this movie again. And I gotta say, of the 2010s, Pixar has made some pretty good movies. I think people, in comparison to other decades, they're not gonna hail it as much as probably, you know, the 2000s, but I can't help it. I think Pixar is doing just as great of work as they did 25 years ago.